Hey everyone, my name is Andrew Davis and you are watching Conversations in Pop Culture, brought to you by my sponsor, Mixum Printing, the smarter way to print. I know printing your creative project can be confusing and stressful, but Mixum is here to make it easy. From their instant quote calculator that lets you get as many quotes as you want for free to their 24-hour customer service support, Mixum is here to make sure your printing runs smoothly from start to finish. And right now you can choose from a range of premium printing options and materials. And the company has also printed so many successful Kickstarter campaigns. Some of them you have even heard about on this very show. Sam Quinnen actually showed off what 47 Furious Tales looks like, which is printed by Mixum. And they offer services in the United States, Canada, Australia, and the UK, which means you have no excuse not to use Mixum. And they can print and reach your audience anywhere in the world. So if you're ready to print smarter, not harder, head over to Mixum.com. And right now they're running a promotion where listeners of my show can drop my name, Andrew Davis, in the message tab of a current order to get a 5% discount on their first order. And I know print is expensive. Both my guests can attest to that. And whether you're going corporate, Kickstarter, you just made your goal, or you did $10,000 over your goal, 5% makes a big difference. And it can help. So that is Mixam.com. Type my name, Andrew Davis, in the message tab of your current order to receive a 5% discount on that very order. And without further ado, I have the comic creator team of returning guests, Laurie Foster, and new guest, Matt Frank. And unfortunately, Paul could not join us. He was supposed to, but stuff's going on, and we just move forward here. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're excited to be here.
Heck yeah.
Oh, yeah, man. So I'm very excited. And obviously you have a Kickstarter that has doubled what its initial goal was supposed to be, and that's Miss Medusa's Monstrous Menagerie, I think is how it's pronounced. If I get the name
Close
wrong.
enough.
Menagerie.
Menagerie makes it sound all fancy, and
it's better that way. I'm fine with that.
Can we curse on this show? I don't remember.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay, it makes it all fancy and shit.
So obviously, I think you have 9 or 8 days left, and you're really, I think, over 200% funded, and a bunch of people have already heard what this story is. But for those who haven't, what is the basic premise of this comic so that people are sort of caught up before we really dive into it?
Thank you. So I believe from the trailer, we described it as a horror, what was it? A horror slice of life drama, workplace comedy thing. The nutshell is that in like an alternate version of Earth, of history, mythological creatures turned out to all be real. And they were more or less revealed to the world as real during World War II. After World War II ended, now we have a bunch of monsters and mythological gods and spirits and fae and all this other crap running around. Got to do something with them. So one of the last remaining Gorgons, as far as we know, whose legal name is Gina Tatopoulos, decided, I'm going to make a circus, a carnival, so I can give all these people jobs and also make a lot of money. It's not entirely altruistic. So the story really begins when our main character, Sharon, applies for a job as the publicist, the promoter of Miss Medusa's Monstrous Menagerie. They have 666 monsters. They don't actually, but it sounds good on paper. And it's really kind of following this story of these characters and their messed up, and for lack of a better term, fucked up lives.
So to dive into this a little bit more, I mean, obviously we're talking 1963. We're talking the Midwest. At least the first arc of this, or the first issues in the Midwest. I don't know if it's going to come east. I don't know if it's going to go more out to LA. But for the time period, obviously, you know, it's a traveling circus / carnival. And it's got these monsters in it. They're, I guess, a little bit more human, and they're interacting with humans. So where did the idea really come for this? Because it is very much a slice of life. It's introducing monsters. It's also introducing, I guess, the last freak show. Because when I read it, I'm originally from New York, and I live in Connecticut, and this is very much Coney Island-like, where just turned up to a 10 versus not being, and a little bit out of the norm and paranormal to some degree. And so where did all this really come from? Because it is interesting when you're going back, but you're all going back in time to what some people call simpler time, but also bringing that freak show element back into it, and then teaming it up with some supernatural paranormal shit as well. So how is that all really built out?
Well, it really, the idea germinated really a couple of years ago. I'd say 4 or 5 years ago. I was just kicking around ideas for a creator-owned series, because I've been wanting to do an original creator-owned series for years. I've mostly worked on licensed books like Godzilla and Transformers, and I'm like, I want to do something original. And I did a poster for a convention called SoonerCon, based in Oklahoma City, and on the poster, it was sort of this carnival of monsters vibe. And I knew I wanted a ringmaster of some kind. And eventually I landed on the idea of a Gorgon Medusa ringmaster. And that image was just really fun. And I was kicking the idea around with Paul, who I eventually made the writer on the project. Well, rather, Paul was softballing. How have I described it before? Paul was unintentionally giving me his resume every time we talked about it, because he kept like throwing out ideas, and I'm like, you just want to write this thing? And Paul, like, over the course of a year, became an expert on carnivals and circuses and how they worked, like down to the nitty-gritty details. And I realized I don't have the time or attention span to write something with this much detail in it. Paul, you take it and run with it. And he really found the setting. I knew I wanted to set it in the American South. Because then that gives us some juicy details. Because the thing is that they're not all monsters. The real monsters of the story are very animalistic. You have giant snakes, you have Groot slangs, you have chimeras, you have all this crap. And then you've got Fae, which have their own culture and their own languages and their own weird way of interacting with reality. So and you have all these other, like, again, gods and demigods and stuff who are just trying to get a paycheck. And there's a lot of juicy, a lot of juicy.
Well, we're gonna dive into it.
Yeah, to
I
really
come from the world, so you understand.
Mm-hmm.
I come from the world of Zenoscope, and I come from the world of Aspen, and that's kind of where I play in. And I love people at where you used to work, and you still might work. One of my favorite people, and you're gonna know the name when I drop it, is Chris Ryle.
Chris.
And Chris has been on a few times, so
nice.
and so but I don't want to get you or me in trouble, so we're gonna stop right there.
Chris got me my job, man. Like, he was the one who practically started my career. So, Matt, do you want to do Godzilla covers? Yes, please. So, go ahead.
I figured you'd get a kick out of it.
Mm-hmm.
I figured you'd get a kick out of it. But going into the story a little bit, because it is very interesting, because this world, and this is something that I really like about this book, is that the carnival is a world in of itself. And the setting, I feel, is very much a character. And then these characters are also obviously characters, and they're driving the story. And so what was this like, really building this out? Because this world technically, and not saying it should be done, but you could take these characters out and replace them with new characters and have a similar but also extremely different story. Because, and what was that like? Because it's very much world building, I feel, is the quintessential component of this comic. because these people are traveling together, and the circus is obviously attracting, and it is an attraction because they're monsters. You know, I don't think anybody's going there because they want to see a human in this circus per se. They're going there because it's something different. It's that like freak show, Coney Island experience. And so what was that like really building this out? Both, you know, obviously you've done a little writing, and Laura, you've done a lot of writing, and even just playing a part in this, and all three of you, and obviously Paul's not here, but all three of you really building it out and making it work and making the gears work. Because before I think you can even insert the characters, the world has to work.
I mean, it was you know, Paul and I spent a good, you know, couple of years throwing ideas back and forth, and now, you know, we're throwing ideas back and forth with Laurie, now having to like watch this this nightmare of text going being thrown out there. So and of course getting her she's over here, getting her feedback is always extremely helpful. Mostly because she's like, sometimes she's like, okay, but hold on, let's get issue 1 done first.
Right, like we'll be talking about like world building, like you say, and Paul will be like, well, I have this really cool thing planned in issue 46, and I'm like, okay, good. But give it a sec though. How does it pertain to issue 1? Like Matt was saying.
And then even going further into this, because obviously the way I read it, and maybe I read this book wrong, is that Sharon is the publicist, and everything is sort of tied into her, at least in the first issue, where it's kind of like she's weaving the, I guess, needle through the entire piece of fabric in a lot of ways, and everything is relating to her. And so what was this like, her coming in, wanted to be the publicist, and then slowly being introduced into all the characters and seeing how it works? Because as a reader, we start seeing how the carnival works through her eyes, and we're sort of getting, I don't want to say, you know, first person view of it, but we're getting third person view of that, because I don't know about you guys, but I'm not a carnival expert by any stretch of the imagination. If somebody is watching and they're a carnival expert, feel free to tell me that you're a carnival expert, and I will be thoroughly impressed. I might even send you my digital bundle package for my Kickstarter early if you are a carnival expert and you can substantiate that claim. But kidding aside, what was that like really setting that up? Because that also sets the tone of this book in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, Paul was the one who really dove into becoming an expert on carnivals, and by extension, I started learning stuff. And Laurie's caught some of the blast radius of all of the stuff being thrown around. Is I didn't know that what the term roustabout meant until Paul told me what it meant, and it just there's such a culture and economy associated with carnival life. You know, there's a reason why people would run off to join the circus, because it's always moving from place to place. It's attractive for people who maybe don't have the best reputation in certain cities, and that lends itself really well to a population of sentient characters, sentient creatures who are not technically human, and who's, especially in the 1960s southern United States, might not have, you know, might have an additional layer of difficulty with also, you know.
You could go even further into that, where obviously we all know who the X-Men are. And it's not a secret that the X-Men is built out of the civil rights movement and mutants being persecuted and a variety of other things. And you can imagine that deep down in the South, or even in the Southern Midwest, that these monsters would be persecuted, but it's very hard to persecute a bunch of people when they're all collective together. It's not impossible, but there is this saying of having, you know, support, where if you have a bunch of monsters all working in a similar job, you know, it's going to be harder. You can ostracize them collectively, but they also have internal support with each other. And, you know, it's giving a, you know, I guess a layer of support. And that's why some of these monsters are obviously there. And then, but they obviously have their internal positions and their internal problems as well. But it's the idea that it's almost a safe space. And I hate to use that term, but, you know, if your job is a bunch of monsters with you, it's very interesting. And even setting it in the South and throwing that in there, you know, the book doesn't directly deal with that. I mean, that's in play, and I think it could be very much implied.
I mean, eventually it will. Like, I don't want to spoil anything, but like I said, it's a very juicy setting because, you know, the South in the United States, especially in the 1960s, is a cultural battleground. And there's a lot to unpack. And yes, you're right. If you can all collect together, it's a literal safety in numbers. But then you start, as you said, there start to become difficulties within the hierarchy of the menagerie itself, of all the internal power structures, the internal power dynamics, especially considering how Gina interacts with some of her performers in a not terribly morally upstanding way.
And even to go further into this, and obviously I'm going to drop a slight spoiler, there's an issue naturally with the church with these monsters. I mean, it's understandable. I don't think it's that far of a fetch. I don't think I'm ruining anything in particular.
Nah.
I think it's a safe assumption, and I really enjoy the fact that Sharon is like, I told all the people at the church, and you've been booked for the last like 4 days, and I just love that little line in there as like her way of getting a job, of just like showing results first. And I just think it's great where you're having that in play too. But even going beyond, you know, Sharon, obviously we get introduced to Gina and her as a Gordon and / a Medusa, and it's very interesting. And what does her character build out look like? Because she is so fascinating on how she is the ringleader. She's obviously interested in making money. She's interested in running this, and she's trying to make a buck doing it. And even just figuring out that entire thing, and even figuring out her, because she has to be a showman in a lot of ways. And, you know, it's also the face of the business, and there's a lot of stuff going on with that. And there's also stuff going behind the scenes with her. And so what was that really like, building her out and making sure she fits the bill for everything that's out there? Because, well, I live in Bethel, Connecticut, and one of the most famous people, you know, P.T. Barnum, is legitly like a few miles away, and there's a statue of him in like Bethel, Connecticut. So, you know, when we talk about one of the greatest, you know, showmen and one of the greatest circus runners ever, you know, it's pretty interesting where I live. So this is why this is so fascinating to me, because I know a little bit about it.
No, yeah, that's a really good point. Laurie, what does Paul usually say about Gina? Doesn't he have a phrase he likes to use? I'm trying to remember.
I've been trying to remember what it is, and I can't.
It's like,
where are you?
Paul's probably sleeping, and good for him. It was something along the lines of she's complicated, but like in a, God, he has a perfect, it's almost like he's a writer.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, how would you describe her, Laurie?
I was going to point out actually that she's an interesting challenge to write, because she needs to put on a face, and she needs to be nice, and she needs to get this show on the road, and she needs to keep people in line, but she's also like really tired of everyone's shit at the same time.
Yeah, it's that. No, I think that's perfect. She's like kind of tired of being the smartest person in the room, and also, again, I don't want to give too much away because we're just starting to see her character.
I could take a stab at it.
Go for it.
So there are people in business who are known as operators, and what they do is that, and it's not an operator that I'm trying to operate and pull something over you. It's that they know how to operate and be an executive in a business. And the way I read her a little bit is that she has to be an executive, but she's also the brand at the same time. And when you're the executive and you're running your business, because that's what I do, is that I'm the whole thing. And after a while, it's either you really gotta love it, you gotta be making a lot of money, you have to understand that you are gonna make a lot of money doing something, or that you're gonna sell the business in 4 to 5 years and make a big exit. And what starts happening is that you get exhausted from it and you're just sick of it, and you say you want to just yell at people. and so that's kind of what I'm starting to see with her, because as she's bringing Sharon around, you can see there's stuff going on in her interactions, and she's not being unprofessional, but she's being short in a lot of ways with people. And it's very interesting to see that and that play out. And obviously, you've both created a lot of characters. I know, Matt, you've worked on a lot of characters, and I think you've drawn some characters. And so what is this like really building out and knowing how a strong character that needs to hit a certain position in a book is sort of having all of these internal struggles and is in a very interesting comparable position, because it's tricky when you have these things sort of, what I think is starting to divide her a little bit.
I think that's a good observation, because writing a character like Gina it can be very tricky and very challenging. But once you find the character and you kind of get into her headspace, and again, Paul was really great at taking this and running with it. Once you find that once you have this core conceit of a character, she kind of starts writing the story herself. You drop her into a new situation and you know how she's going to react to something. And sometimes she'll surprise you even, where you're like, oh, you know what? This thing could come up. That's something that maybe she's been sitting on for a long time, or maybe we're revealing something about her. I think there's also, especially nowadays, there's a misconception with people who don't do a lot of writing, that your characters all have to, especially your main characters, your heroes, so to speak, have to speak for you, or they speak your voice, and they have to be paragons of virtue or something, or not do anything morally reprehensible, depending on the tone you're going for. And the thing is with a character like Gina is that she is deeply flawed, and kind of on a certain level knows it, and is even a little bit, I would say, even regretful of it, like that she's had to do the things, she feels like she has to do the things she's had to do, and still doesn't like that she's had to do those things. And I think that that's an interesting push and pull dynamic, because again, I don't want to give away too much, but we see a character who is desperate to be loved and doesn't know how. And I don't want to say much more than that, because right now we're still in the greatest showman phase, where she's like, you already sixed and get me more popcorn, Jimmy, and stuff like that. And so but we are seeing a lot of her character in very subtle ways in the first issue.
I feel like something I wanted to add real quick is I feel like if you pay close attention to Matt's artwork, Gina's facial expressions will sometimes give away how she's feeling.
That's better.
And then they'll be contradictory to what she's saying. Like, you'll see her facial expression and you'll be like, oh, okay, I know what she's thinking. Like,
there's a saying where, and then everybody who's over 21 and is in their 30s will know exactly what I'm talking about, is that you go to your job and you're in customer service, you have one persona. And that is arguably your best persona. When you're out in public, people are seeing you, you have to act a certain way. But then you come home and maybe your friends come over and you're watching the football game and you all get drunk and you're making a bunch of statements and you're speaking loudly and you're not speaking in the greatest tone per se, and explicitives are coming out perhaps, and that's your worst form. And what's going on with Gina in a lot of ways, and correct me if I'm wrong and feel free to disagree, is that sort of, I think, is what is happening, is that she's saying all the right things, but her body language is dictating something completely else. And it's super interesting, and I'm sure it gets a lot more complicated. But I don't want to push too much further into this, because there's other stuff going on too that we see. And what I really like is I like dealing with Hobby Brownie and talking about how, union strikes and there's issues with paid workers in the circus and getting in the circus, and how people aren't in the circus, but they're in the circus, and even just dealing with that intricate business stuff and throwing in, because I would imagine that really does happen in circuses and carnivals,
sure.
and how people show up and how that's like a real work problem in a lot of ways. And it also adds a character, I feel, to this entire book, and it adds a tone and it adds a sense of realness to it. And so what was that like, sneaking some of that stuff in there? And just also having, it being sort of jargon and confusing, because when you're reading it, and it's not sloppy writing, I want to make that clear, but it sets how this book is supposed to be read and how it's not set in 2021. It's set in the 1960s. And it gives the book a sense of character in a lot of ways. So what was that like writing? Because I could imagine it could be either really difficult or a boatload of fun to do it.
I mean, it's I would say sometimes the most difficult books to write are the most fun, and or sometimes the most, and vice versa, however you want to put it. I really appreciate that sorry, Laurie.
No, you're good.
Okay.
You're good.
Okay, I really appreciate that Paul did do that with that initial pass on the writing. And I mean, very little changed from the first draft he put together, because I was so in love with it as soon as he sent it to me. I mean, we have a bit of an inside joke. When Paul is sending stuff to me, I almost have no notes, except for once or twice I'll be like, wait a minute, what about this? And that's like, and I usually only say something if I'm like, that doesn't work, because everything else works so damn well. And I love that the jargon is consistent and dense throughout the book, and we don't stop to explain it. Because if you stop to explain it, you're getting a little too didactic. You're getting into Harry Potter territory, which is fine for a book that's maybe targeted a little younger. But if you have an adult targeted book, or just at least slightly older targeted, you want to respect your reader's intelligence. And you can pick up through context kind of what's going on, especially when it comes to the Fae unions and things like that. Because of course the Fae would have a union, and it's this completely incomprehensible series of ins and outs, and because they have their own, they are not from our reality. They don't even know how our reality is supposed to work, except that we're a bunch of suckers, and sometimes they can steal a baby or two. Like, and it's like, well, this is our baby now, that's how it works. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. So you're gonna get sued.
I was gonna say, I think it's been kind of interesting with the jargon, and even with the creatures, because we're trying to maintain that aspect of realism, but also it's about shit that isn't real at the same time. And I feel like the ironic thing is that we've gotten more crap from people about the creatures if they disagree with how they look than we have about the jargon and the historical stuff. So
that's because that has been such a running gag for us behind the scenes, of people getting upset about creatures that don't exist. Which is inevitable, because I mean, it's the same across the board in comics, I would say, that people are going to get more upset about how the alterations to their favorite fictional characters than they would about real world implications of something.
Hey, I cried when Stephanie Brown died. So don't come talking to me. That made me sad. I legitimately cried during Batman War Games. I was so upset.
I mean, there is evidence to support that you form a similar emotional attachment to a fictional character than you do to a real person. I mean, that's maybe why representation is really important, but we won't get into that. Or we can. I have 4 hours.
I cried like a baby. I was so upset.
Oh, I cry. Here's how an amazingly giant baby I am. I cry at the end of Kong Skull Island when John C. Reilly goes back home. That scene has me sobbing like a baby. And it's this dumbass movie about a giant ape punching helicopters and then lizards. But his character has such a beautiful little arc, and he gets to go home and look at his face, and he says, I get all that. I cried at the end of Gamera, Guardian of the Universe. Leave me alone.
This is so bad on so many levels.
I know. I am history's greatest monster. Go ahead.
But even going further than this, and this is my favorite part of the entire book, is when Red Comb Andy and Trash are talking about not fucking with the unionized fairies. I just thought that was one of the funniest things I've ever read. How you don't talk about that and you don't fuck with them. And obviously fairies are supposed to be these nice little creatures that are tiny and you know, very, very polite, and you capture them and maybe you see one that leaves you a quarter when you're younger. But you know, fairies can be horrific, they could be mean, they could be catty, they could be bitchy and what was even the rationale of writing this and building this out? Because it is so perfect. Because the fairies would have a union, they would be extremely aggressive and like draconian in their union. They would be, you know, you're like the fiercest negotiators on the planet. And if you make one little mistake and you take away a sick day, but give them an upgrade in healthcare, they'll go on a strike and march down, tiny as they are, I might add.
And I feel like that's another great observation. I gotta be honest, Laurie, it's really weird hearing someone else talk about this book, because I've been this has been such an insular little club for so long. That's because
people don't read comics who interview you guys. It's true. It's true.
It's also finally done.
Yeah, it's also done. Yeah, it's almost like it's been 4 years of Paul trying to drag me away from all my licensed books so that I can work on this.
No, it's true though, in which most interviews I find, actually, I was on a show on Monday and it was a great show, but the person didn't know 90% of what I was doing. And it's a problem where I know everything about who I'm interviewing. And I don't get, I get people telling me all the time saying, you actually read my book. This is actually amazing. You're an interviewer who actually reads the book. And this is why on my forum, I'm like, you have to send me a copy. And if you don't send me a copy, I can't do as good a job as interviewing because I don't have a copy of your book. It's like logic. I don't need a physical copy of your book, but I need a digital copy so I can actually do homework. And also, you know, I'm cash poor and I can't back everybody's Kickstarter and I like to read stories. So that too. It's self-interest, but it's work. It's work.
Sure.
So we'll continue about the catty fairies, if you will.
I mean, just again, it was sort of one of those situations that started writing itself, which is to say Paul wrote it. But this idea, again, of the fairies having their own union. I mean, there's a reason why internally, and again, I'm trying not to spoil anything, but there's a reason why a large, sometimes we internally refer to the first arc of the story as the Fae arc, because a lot of it has to do with the Fae and what's going on with them. Because the thing is that, again, this is a little bit revealing of Gina's character. We see a little of it in issue 1. She really also, she thinks that she is in control and she thinks she can handle anything that's thrown at her or fire it. And I think we're going to see, you know, what that is going to be put to the test in a lot of ways. And again, I'm trying not to spoil anything, but I mean, of course, the Fae, as soon as they were to come into our world and start integrating into the concept of capitalism, they would, of course, interpret it in a very specific way that makes it highly fucking dangerous. But because Gina is so damn sure, and she's already been through so much on her end, she's like, I can handle the Fae. I can handle the fairies. Can she? I don't know. Maybe we'll find out. There is a reason why they are working with her, so we'll see. But yeah, it's just one of those things that just once you get this good idea, you get this solid bedrock, it just starts writing itself.
Yeah, it gets very interesting what's going on and what they're doing, and even just how we get exposed to it. And it's super, super interesting in that regard. And this is why when you start entering this world, and obviously, you know, I come from Zenoscope and I come from, Aspen, and then I sort of dive into this. And I'm not saying, I know everything about, fairies and pixies and all that stuff, but, when you start really getting into this, it is such an interesting space. And there are so many people who have done very interesting things with this. I mean, I don't know if you guys know who J.S. Moore is. He has
I feel like I know the name. What's that?
His graphic novel is Autumn Gray.
Okay, I heard of it, and people told me about it, but I haven't had a chance to read it.
Well, I'll go back my digital bundle, and you can get the first volume.
Awesome.
It's a $10 book on Comixology. My digital bundle is $12 with 26 books in it. Right, I go hard. And I am probably before my launch going to have like 35 books for $12.
Awesome.
I want to get like 3,000 books into it for $12. I want to get it so it's a fraction of like a penny per book, just to be the guy who makes it so bad for everybody else who's doing a digital bundle. I will take great pleasure in being the king of the digital bundle, and that is a title belt I will have christened, and I will have it on a John Cena spinner belt, and it'll be really, really funny. And then I will fight Effie at GCW for his internet title. And I walk on crutches, so that match is going to be hysterically funny. In so many ways. It will break the internet and then some.
I'm learning so much about you today, Andrew.
Just seeing the interview last night when I was getting shit. Because everybody's wrong about the comic book market. So I don't care anymore. This is my show. It's not anybody else's. It's Conversations in Pop Culture. It's my show, and I run it the way I want to. My sponsors tell me how not to run my show, which is phenomenal. Trust me, I've reached Rogan level, just not the money.
You need that on a shirt. I've reached Rogan level, just not the money.
Yes.
It may or may not be a goal in my Kickstarter.
I was going to say, that needs to be a stretch goal for somebody. Somebody unrelated. I'm sorry, I have to put this out there. I was having a conversation today with some friends, and one of them, I don't remember the context of this, but the phrase, who needs, what was it? Damn it, I lost it. It was because I had another way to say it, and it was really upsetting and bad. What was it? Oh, I'll figure. It'll come back to me later. Go on.
Well, I could give you a bunch of more time right now because I'm going to do a live read because I owe people things that people pay for this. So obviously my friends at Lone Wolf Comics right now have a great Kickstarter going on. I think they got like 7 or 6 days left, and that is Snowpaw 1, which takes place in 19th century Scotland, where a fierce heroine with an adventurous spirit nearly gives into social expectations of her time, but a trite fairy tale ending is not to be, as Cyrilla McKinley discovers her werewolf lineage. Her eyes are open to the existence of supernatural beings and creatures of fantasy, sort of like your book. And Cyrilla McKinley is Snowpaw, and it's actually, as I stated right now, live on Kickstarter from the creative team of Rob A. Multari, Mog Park, Bruno Costa, Dave Lenz, and I'm sure you guys know who Dave Lenz is. He's arguably the best letterer in all the comics, arguably, and Katrina Rhodes. And so you could join the Wolf Pack, not NWO Wolf Pack, because that's owned by WWE, by backing the Kickstarter today at Lone Wolf Comics /Snowpaw. I'm going to put it in the comment section down below. It'll also be ticking down in a few seconds here on it. It's a really cool book. There's a lot of cool stuff going on with that. And so obviously, Rob is killing it, and that interview was phenomenal. I may or may not be doing a mustard cover for somebody in that Kickstarter world. There's a particular somebody from Big Dog Inc. If you're watching, that offer is still on the table. My rate is $100, and I will supply the mustard. So having said that, there's a lot of other stuff going on with this book, and I don't want to press too hard into the story because I do want to talk about rewards, because that's what really matters here. And I think that The rewards are pretty cool. And so obviously there's digital, and digital is the cheapest for all parties involved. And then there's also the print, and I'm not too sure which is which, so you're going to correct me on which is which. I hope I'm right on this. I don't know which one this is.
That's the main print cover.
And this is also what it looks like without the dressing on it. And so what is the story behind this cover? Because it is a pretty cool cover.
Well, I mean, we were again behind the scenes. Myself and Paul and Laurie were discussing what to do for a new cover, because I had a piece of art that I had done before, but that was already a couple years old and been used for a couple other things. So we were kicking around ideas and maybe thinking about referencing old, specifically old carnival and theater posters and stuff. And then Laurie found one that was just this beautiful old carnival magician poster of this big image of this magician, and he's got all these performers in his hands. And I saw that, I'm like, that's it, that's the one, that's I need to, this is procking something in my brain. So at some point the idea of the playing cards came to mind as something, you know, to be in Gina's hands. And then again, it's like, if you get a great core idea, it just starts snowballing. And that was when I put the characters into the onto the playing cards, because, you know, they are all kind of in Medusa's hands, and she is a little bit of a manipulator, a huge manipulator, and of course, you know, just a little bit, but yeah.
There's a lot of stuff going on in this cover, even though it doesn't seem like it. Yeah. You know, obviously there's the cards, obviously her hair is snakes, there's a bug going on, there's other cards that are sort of not necessarily in play, but you can see a little bit of the tips in them. And so, I mean, it's a very interesting cover, because it doesn't reveal too much about the story per se, which is not typically. Usually cover A sort of deal with stories and reveal some stuff. And this is just showing who she is, but it's also very active for being a headshot cover. And it's a very interesting play on what's going on, and we sort of get the eye-catching elements of it. You know, obviously this is what it looks like in the trade dress, and that also is helpful because you see some of the stuff going on where it's definitely more poster-oriented in the trade dress of it and what's going on with it. And it's a, you know, it's kind of, I guess, the 1960s carnival element to it. And then conversely, we have this one, which is some definitely more painted look to it. Definitely Coney Island is written on this one, I think is a fair statement. And so what was it like having, you know, the cover B or the more exclusive cover and doing it in a very different art style, and also having it playing off the tent and opening up into her a little bit and playing around with her body, but also it's the tent. And I don't know how to describe it. This is why we have pictures.
Yeah. I mean, this is the sideshow edition, right, Laurie?
Yes.
Yeah. And this is artwork by Mark Dos Santos, who is an incredible artist. I've known him for several years, and he has the ability to channel these retro art styles. And this is specifically inspired by old pulp novels from the early 1960s. In its color, in its composition, with the text and everything. If you were to see some of those old covers, you would be like, okay, this looks like something from that era. But I don't think any of us realized the tent opening thing until, like, I didn't realize it until it was pointed out to me by my assistant.
So I will explain why I noticed it first.
Please do.
I don't know if I'm a big anime guy, and Monster Musume is...
I got Recnera over there. I hit my mic. Sorry, go ahead.
So Monster Musume has a snake as the main character, and once you start looking at snakes and creatures and half-human creatures, and then you start going on Hero Forge and trying to build an action figure, and you start playing around with stuff, well, your mind just naturally drifts towards things. So there you go. But it's a very interesting play on exactly what's going on, and it definitely has that retro feel to it. It's also really just an interesting cover. And what is that like for you both with this project to have, a cover that definitely fits more the theme and is not, 2021 oriented? Because, certain comics don't understand how to stay with their theme. And I feel like certain projects don't know how to do that. And it's very important, I feel, that if you're going to commit, then you should at least have something that goes in there and play into the gimmick a little bit. And maybe I'm too much of a wrestling fan when I say that, but it's the idea that I think it helps tremendously, and also it's a convincing point, I feel.
Yeah,
Laurie, do you want to? You want to talk about it? Yeah.
No, go ahead.
No, you please. I've been doing this.
You did, and then my thoughts went out of my head.
Sorry.
It's been really fun. I find it's more fun to figure out covers that will fit the era and will fit the theme. And with the sideshow cover, we had kind of a fun time coming up with, because with a lot of these books that have uncensored covers or interiors, it's a very specific type of pinup, and we were like,
yeah, we're going to talk about that too.
We want to do something provocative, but not quite that cheesecake pinup, and we messed around with a bunch of concepts, and this is where we ended up. And it's so cool. Yeah, it was really fun to work together coming up with all these concepts.
Yeah.
So one of the things, because you just mentioned it, sorry for cutting you off, Matt, is that you have, I think, a censored and an uncensored book, and that's something that is fascinating. Now Zenescope, for those, and I'm basing it off of them, is that they'll have an uncensored cover, but they don't do nudity in their books. It's just a personal choice. And I understand that certain comics want to do it. So what is that like to do both? Because that sort of changes it to some degree, because I think I could give, this book to a 13-year-old and they would be fine with it being non-nude, with it being, I guess, covered up. But I wouldn't want to give a 13-year-old this book if it was nudity, if that makes any sense, because it's just a matter that, maybe you don't feel comfortable in one segment. And so what was that like? Because it's a very interesting thing. I haven't seen it done too much, where there's a censored and an uncensored. I've seen it on covers, but I haven't seen it in interiors where there's two versions, because it does definitely hit two different audiences. And you could sell, the product twice, because somebody might want both versions, or you can sell it to certain demographics, or you could feel more comfortable. For instance, if you go to a con and the medium age is 13 to 25-year-olds, you might not bring the nude covers to that, because the last thing you want is a parent pissed that they bought something for their kid, and really the wife is pissed at the husband for giving their son this book. That's really why they're upset.
Oh man. I it's so funny because the I would say that our nudity is very egalitarian, because it's, it's not necessarily strictly for titillation purposes.
I didn't see it, so I have to ask it, and I have to assume it's to the extreme, because I read the PC version.
It's just one of those things where, again, we're trying to be realistic, and I kind of hate that term. I have to be honest. I hate the term realism a little bit, because I feel like it's kind of abused and it's kind of a loaded term, especially in the entertainment industry.
Oh, you're not going to like me. My favorite topic is dirty realism.
No, but see, again, I understand the idea that's trying to be conveyed. But I also come from a world of Japanese monsters where you try to introduce this stuff to people and they'll complain that it's not realistic. And I'm like, it's not the point. But I think that there's a difference. I like to say a believability you get people to buy into this idea, get them to believe in what's happening and to go with it. Because if there were mythological creatures and monsters in America in the 1960s, there's going to be certain topics and certain things are going to come up, and we don't want to shy away from those things, some of which is sex and violence, and not necessarily sex and violence for its own sake, but for the sake of pushing the story forward. And
humanity as a whole has sex, violence, has love, has caring, has acts of generosity in it.
It's a very human book, ironically.
And it's the idea that, even going into that, and not to get too much into a political discussion, but I feel like writers always shy away from real issues, and they're scared to touch real issues to some degree. And look, I get it. I tend to do whatever I want on this show. My sponsors let me do what I want, and I run my show however I want. And if I lose a sponsor, big deal to me. My whole philosophy is that if you don't like what I'm saying, you could turn the channel off. You can not like me. You can do whatever you want. I've survived a boatload of attacks for what I've said, and at this point, I don't think anybody can end me anymore. And it gives you a lot of freedom when you have control over what you want to do. And a lot of people are like, I'll happily get you ad space. I have a bunch of people who are willing to book with me. It's an amazing thing when you don't care, and when you do what you think is appropriate. And I think that, I'm looking for good stories, and I think that's something that's lacking. Like, I want edges pushed. I am genuinely bored in comics right now because edges aren't being pushed. And unless those edges start to get pushed, I don't want to write a comic, everybody. But I might have to, because there's legitimately nobody pushing the edges. And it's actually, I really don't want to write a comic. I want to do this instead. But if I have to go write a comic to go push the edges, I'm going to have to go do that. And I don't want to do it. So guys, write better.
It's an interesting balancing act because, if you're writing something for a particular audience, it's tricky because you don't, I'm going to quote Kevin Smith here a little bit. You don't want to be didactic and on a soapbox. You want to push themes without necessarily bringing your entire book to a halt. Like I just wrote and illustrated partially a graphic novel based on an old Japanese TV show from the 1970s. And I knew I was going to be constrained to a certain extent. Get out of here. I was going to be constrained to a certain extent, but I knew there were some little things I wanted to slip in there. Just some little bitty subjects I wanted to, like, can we at least talk about this? Like, this thing is brought up in the original show. It's not going to work in 2021. So let's find a different angle to approach this, and maybe even a better angle, a more positive angle that maybe even try something that people can, take from it and appreciate. So, and with Miss Medusa, we're going to be pushing some boundaries. We're going to be making some people uncomfortable. But it's, again, there's a realness and there's a humanity we want to tap into and not shy away from. Because a couple times while we were in the writing phase, I was a little like, I don't know, are we going to get in trouble for this? But then I thought about it and I'm like, it would be not only dishonest, but almost like it's almost our imperative, our moral imperative to include some of the stuff we do, because some of the stuff has to be talked about, even if it's all subtext.
Yeah.
And also Kickstarter allows that at this point because, you're not having to deal with a mainstream publisher or a secondary publisher or a third publisher. And also there's a lot of printers. My sponsor is a printer. So there you go. I know all about it, where certain printers won't touch certain things. But even at that point, a lot of printers don't care. A company like Mixum doesn't necessarily care. A company like Comics Wellsprings, printing books, doesn't care. And then there's a variety of others that I was just happy to. And also, people, I'm presuming, sort of know what they're getting into at this point as well. It's kind of hard not to know what you're getting into on certain things. And there's also plenty of interviews where you guys talk about this. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff to go on with it, and I just find it super interesting that you're doing both versions, and that because it's something I haven't seen. I've seen all nude books, I've seen all PC books, I've seen obviously the covers is pretty basic, but I've never seen somebody say, hey, we're going to do both versions of this book. So I think it's super interesting. And then even going further into this, obviously you got the postcard set is coming. I know that rewards 20 and up get, I think, an additional postcard type thing. I'm not too sure what the story is behind that. Obviously a magnet set, t-shirt. I'm going through this quick sketch cover, I think by you, right?
Oh, that
one's Paul's.
That one's by Paul, but I am doing a couple of sketch covers, and I'm very excited to dig into those because I've already gotten some very interesting requests.
This is also like an original standee art. Obviously, this is hollow foil editions as well, and those are always fun. And then what else do I have? Obviously, you could be in the book, so that's kind of cool. And people really like that. More original art is coming. A life-size Medusa standee.
I'm so excited for that.
That's kind of crazy. That's kind of trippy. Well, what's the story behind that? Because that's a big one right there.
Laurie, that's all you.
Gosh, I'm trying to remember how I initially came up with the idea. I think we were talking about conventions, doing conventions, and we talked about it for our other book, Unthinkables, potentially doing cardboard standees, and I dug into it, and I was like, this is actually a thing. Like, I can order this, and it's not prohibitively expensive, and then when it came time for Medusa, I was like, we need to do a standee, because not only is it perfect for the theme, who wouldn't want this? It's so fucking cool.
Yeah. It's such a fun, fantastic idea, and I'm desperate to get one, have it in my studio space, but in my new studio space that I'm currently setting up, and I'll have it off to the side. And if anybody asks, what is that? I'm like, oh, well, let me tell you about a thing. Yeah. So yeah, it's and I can't wait to also take it with me to conventions and stuff, because what an eye catcher! It's what. And I'm still sitting here and looking at this core design of Miss Medusa and just thinking I did that? I came up with that? So yeah. I did want to say real quick, I have something I want to show on camera that just came to me. We just got another piece of fan art. There it is. It's kind of hard to see, but it's a piece of Medusa of Gina fan art from Joseph Compton. I know it's kind of hard to see. I'll have to send it to y'all later or something. But yeah, he did this great little black and white line art fan piece.
You can show it a little bit bigger now.
Oh, there we go. Okay. It's just, if it'll focus, it's a little hard to see because of, there we go. So you can see the details a little better that way.
Oh, that's awesome.
Because my camera's all blown out because I got both my screens on. So
we're back to normal now.
Okay.
So.
But yeah, so thank you, Joe, for that lovely piece of fan art. We're getting fan art. It makes me very happy.
Andrew, I had something to show real quick too, if that's okay.
Sure.
I do have the original art for the sideshow cover physically on me.
That's so good.
That Mark mailed to me.
So awesome. Mark tried to trade that to me for another piece of art that I made, and I'm sorely tempted to just do that.
It's so nice. I'm gonna keep it. You guys better grab it soon, because I'm just gonna decide that I'm gonna keep it.
I would make a bid, but I'm broke, and what I mean by broke is I'm cash poor.
Yeah,
I don't get my paycheck for another 2.5 weeks. So of my new job that I started on Tuesday. So.
Try doing 2 comics back to back that are to both both you got to wait for a Kickstarter to finish up, but it happens. It's all right. That's what I started selling. That's why there's some shelves that are now empty. No, I'm also moving. So but yeah, I just, again, speaking back to the subject matter and to something I wanted to circle back around to, the subject matter and just the themes of it and the places we go with this book. The fact that we found a publisher who was okay with that, not only okay with it, but was like, okay, but more though. I mean, I'm just over the moon because I'm sitting here thinking like, oh man, whatever publisher we get, they're gonna
Because
make us take
you
shit
come from
out.
mainstream, and that's what's so interesting. Not to
But
put
yeah.
you into a position, but IDW is a mainstream company. I think it's safe to say they are a publicly traded company, from my understanding. So you could actually buy stock in them or parts of them, I think. And so, it's very different when IDW has Sonic the Hedgehog, Transformers, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I think they have Star Trek still, right? Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
They have one of my favorite books, Kanto, which is an original title for them. And I'm waiting for my Kanto 1 to come back from CBCS. I can't wait. It was signed by Drew Zucker and David Booher. And David's been on a few times, and that guy's going to kill it. He's going to kill it. He's going to put everybody to shame. He's the sleeper writer. He's the sleeper writer. Just saying. He's got to bet on now. But what is that like for you, that you're now writing a book outside of IDW and working on a book? Maybe not writing, but they're working on a book, I should say, that, on Kickstarter, and it's killing it in a lot of ways.
I mean, I'm first of all, I'm kind of like, what? People like this? This is doing well. What's happening? Because not that I necessarily had any doubt in the book. It's one of those things where if you have a product and you have a story or you have a project and you like it, it's not so much surprising that it resonates with people. It's more the surprising thing is how many people and how much it resonates, because like you said, I come from what one would consider to be mainstream comics, Godzilla and Transformers and these other licensed properties. I did my first Marvel cover earlier this year for Trials of Ultraman. And so coming over here, though, to an indie book that you really get to sink your teeth into and get to, and you kind of get to do. Okay, so I think that in comics, when you say I get to do whatever I want, I don't think that's necessarily true, because it's more like I get to tell the story I want, and I don't have to necessarily. The only person you have to answer to is yourself and your team, and if they're already on board with your vision, then you're going to get to tell the story you want to tell. And while I haven't necessarily done the bulk of the writing for Miss Medusa, the whole thing was originally my idea. I came up with conceptualize the original setting and the core cast of characters, and what the overall impetus was going to be. And Paul was the one who gave it all the meat and potatoes and really found the story. And it is a little bit of whiplash sometimes, because like, I will be doing this, and we're really only answerable we only answer to each other. I answer to Paul answers to me. We both answer to Laurie. And then meanwhile, I just finished work on this other book, where we got notes back from the licensor, and they're usually pretty cool about it, but every now and then you'll get a weird note where you're like, why do we have to change that? And it's like, because it's not like that in the original show. And you're like, oh, right. This isn't our space to play in. We're just renting it.
It's also very interesting, because right now, and this is why I was getting flack last night, and this is the difference of opinion, is that, right now Kickstarter is so hot. And one of the things why I like podcasting is that I could take this content, and if YouTube's the hottest thing on the market, I could drop it right into YouTube. If Facebook thing gets super hot, I could drop it into Facebook. If then Instagram's hot, I could drop it into Instagram. If Periscope gets hot, I could drop it there. And so one of the things that I've been talking about, and what I think, and a lot of people disagree, is that I think Kickstarter is getting to a point where it's not sustainable, what's going on in the industry. I think that there are way too, and I think comics in general have gotten to a point. I think that what's happening is that people were on stimulus checks, people had extra money, people were receiving money from the government. People also had less options to spend their money, and so they were ordering more comics from home because nothing was open. And now what's starting to happen is that that has to rescind. Comics have been through a boom in the last 22 months. And I think it's fair to say that Kickstarter has gone through a big boom, and that's because the bar was closed, movie theaters were closed, and places like Amazon were killing it, and anywhere you could order offline. And that's why I think part of this is going to have to rescind. And also that affects me because I'm a comic book investor. You know, I don't sit around and I buy books for 15 bucks and then I sell them for 60. And so I'm viewing this on a very different market level. And so I'm curious what that's like, because I don't think the train is over yet, but I think the train's going to be ending sooner rather than later. And I'm curious both your thoughts on that. And I know you're new to it, Matt. And I know, Laurie, you've been around for forever. And that doesn't mean comics are going to be, you know, dead in the water, but I think that there's going to have to be, you know, the slow growth is coming. I think, because I think that it's overgrown tremendously. And it's a good thing. I want people to make as much money on Kickstarter, but I think it's a reality a lot of people aren't facing.
Right. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how it's going to go. For us, we've always basically used Kickstarter as a pre-order system. And that's worked really well, because it's not just, you know, that we're kickstarting a project. It's that Kickstarter is giving us reach that we wouldn't normally have. And I don't think that's going to stop. I think, like, if you have a good company and a reliable product, Kickstarter serving as a pre-order would remain consistent to an extent. We might not make the same amount of money, but I think it will still continue.
So just to clarify my point, my Kickstarter is legitimately Buy Me a Coffee. It's the exact same format as Buy Me a Coffee. It's just that Kickstarter has a huge amount of traffic. All Kickstarter is for me is it's an order form, and it's slightly cheaper than Buy Me a Coffee because I'm getting huge traffic in, and then I have 2 or 3 extra rewards that make more sense on Kickstarter. For me, it's just a distribution order form. That's what my Kickstarter is. I only need to do it once a year, and that's the plan, and that should be coming once Kickstarter actually allows me to do what I need to do on it, and they actually tell me what I did wrong. Hey, if somebody from Kickstarter is watching this, I'll tweet it at you guys, and you can tell me what I did wrong, and then we can both make a lot of money together. I got no problem with you taking 5, 10, 15%. Just tell me what I did wrong, and I'll be happy, and I'll happily fix it. But I also think Kickstarter used to be a pre-order form. I think that there's people, because I've been doing this for almost 22 months, almost 2 years now, and I know a bunch of people use the pre-order form, and I think that's how Kickstarter was supposed to be. Or the other way is that you have half your book done and you want to kickstart the rest of it, and you've gotten to a point where, hey, I just want to cover some of the printing costs on this, and that, you know, I need a little bit, I need another $3,000 to get over, but I have enough done that this is going to happen, but I want to do it in 6 months versus in a year. And I also think, though, that where Kickstarter's changed is that a lot of people have business models where they're trying to raise $100,000, knowing the book's going to cost $50,000, and then them and the artists are splitting the other $50,000 and using it as a payday on top of printing a bunch of books. And then that's why people with Image are going in Boom Studios. And I'm not going to say they can't do it, but that's definitely sort of a shift in the business. And I think it's going to be very interesting once the landscape changes. And also, there's been a lot of landscape changing with Keanu Reeves and all these top people coming in. And I'm just waiting for IDW to come in. I'm just waiting.
I mean, it is an interesting subject because, I mean, I remember when Kickstarter first started, and it was a much more nebulous thing. It wasn't like there weren't any rules. Like, I remember doing a Kickstarter back in 2012 for a video game with these very nebulous ideas. It was called Kaiju Combat or Colossal Kaiju Combat. Eventually, when somebody got uppity about our name, and it's a long story. But there were no rules at the time, so I was sitting here like trying to get a bunch of stuff done, and then I was going to turn around and do a bunch of art for the Kickstarter, and then we could take that art and use it as part of the campaign. And the guy that I was working with on it, he decided to just go ahead and launch without any art. And I'm sitting here thinking, you look back on that now and you think, were you crazy? Like, you know, but you also have to remember that this was right after Double Fine had done their Kickstarter for what was eventually going to become Broken Age. And that was, you know, that put Kickstarter on the map. That was this giant thing. So everyone thought like, oh, this is free money so long as you have a name and a basic idea. But as you come to learn, that isn't how it works at all. You can't just put your hand out and say, I did X and Y, give me $300,000.
Unless you're Keanu Reeves, then it's fine.
Yeah, I mean,
or unless you have a track record, or you're sort of doing what I'm doing, where I have a built-in audience, but I'm also offering, you know, services essentially with it. But even still, I'm not asking. I'm having to write really good copy, and that took forever to write. Writing copy is such a painful task.
I mean, there's like you're saying, there's more of an art to it, you know, which is why I'm really glad we have Laurie, because she knows all the ins and outs, and she and her team really know what they're doing. Whereas guys like me, you know, I was under the similar impression back then, where I'm just like, yeah, I mean, we can just kind of throw a couple of pieces of art up and they get the idea. And it's like nowadays, you know, I would say that I don't think it's an unfounded observation to say that, yes, Kickstarter is a little bit oversaturated at the moment. So it becomes it's hard to stand above the crowd.
It's very much an institution now versus, you know, the Wild West. And it's so interesting. And also, I think most people actually don't even know what Kickstarter is. I mean, I think people know what Kickstarter is as far as a company. I don't think they understand what it actually is as a product. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to throw out a term here, and I'm sure Laurie knows what it is. But Kickstarter is a gigantic funnel. That's all Kickstarter is. It's a funnel that is made for people who don't understand funnelinics. And that word is a ClickFunnels word. And a bunch of people probably were watching this have never heard of that before. But you know, I'm a big ClickFunnels fan, and I'm going to be building a business next June on ClickFunnels. And it's the idea that that's exactly what Kickstarter is. And how I was writing my copy is I was legitimately reading Russell Brunson's books on the 3 books that he's written for ClickFunnels, how to figure out how to hook story offer and all that stuff. And I think a lot of people, I'm curious how you both feel about this, is that I think a lot of people are okay at it, but I think that a lot of people don't even understand how to maximize the pure effect of Kickstarter and how to write really good copy and understand how to drive a funnel. You know, I don't think people understand the Dream 100 and things of that nature. Like, I'm very in tune with this, and it's just legitimately I'm waiting till my project is sort of live, and my marketing strategy is very different than everybody else. And all these comic people just post in Facebook groups, and that doesn't work anymore. And even being on 30 interviews while your Kickstarter is launching, that doesn't work anymore. There's a lot of other things that have to go into this, because it's not just that. I think a lot of people just don't get it. And look, it's tough to understand all of this. So I'm curious how you guys feel about that.
Yeah, it's I guess I would say, yeah, it's getting more and more complicated. Like you say, just posting on social media won't do the trick anymore, because of how social media algorithms are set up. You post about your Kickstarter twice on Facebook, and then your 2 out of your 4,000 fans can see your post after that.
Yeah. I mean, I was just lamenting about how now we have to navigate all these new little rules on Facebook because they hate external links. So you've gotta tiptoe around stuff and shuck and jive around all these little barriers. Facebook is a garbage site anyway, but the lost you those sponsors. But it's just and now, like you said, even if you have X, I have whatever. That's the thing. I have like 20,000 followers on Twitter, or I think 20 something on Instagram and whatever. You post something and you get a couple of likes. I mean, Instagram's a lot better than that. Instagram is a little more streamlined. You don't have to scroll through so much just garbage in order to get to the people you actually give a shit about.
Right.
Yeah.
It's very complicated, and this should give insight into all this. So Hot Topic used to not look at anybody who on Instagram and cosplayers who had less than 10,000 or 20,000 fans. Last June, they changed their entire tone where they now sponsor people who have less than 10,000 fans because they have higher engagement. So there's been a shift by major companies in the last year where they're moving away from cosplayers who have millions of followers, because while that person might get 100,000 likes, if you have 4.1 million followers, 100,000 on 4.1 million is not 1%. While the person who has 10,000 gets 1,000, that's a 10% engagement. And Hot Topic is saying we want that 10% engagement number. We don't want the 1% number, because we understand that 10% number is going to convert more than that 1% will. And even though that's 100,000 people, that's not getting us money. And this person just brought us a lot of money, and they're actually tracking it. And it's crazy. And also it's understanding who it matters. I know people, if they post things into certain groups for me, obviously it's not a secret that I know Ralph Tedesco from Zenoscope. If all of a sudden my Kickstarter gets into that Zenoscope group, I'm going to be golden, because those people are going to say this is one of our own, and it's going to get funded with minutes, because it's also hitting the right groups, hitting the right positions. And that's something that's super interesting. But I don't want to talk too much about algorithms and all that, because I have to be nice to Facebook for the next month and a half. While my project runs, and I have to be nice to Kickstarter. So Kickstarter is the greatest, guys. They're the greatest, and you should fund all your books on Kickstarter. And I'm in the wrong with Kickstarter. I just want to make it clear, so when they look back on this, they heard it first. No hatred here. Having said all that, though, there's a lot of stuff going on with this book, clearly. And I'm very excited to see where issue 2 goes, because I read issue 1, and everybody dies. Everybody dies. Everybody dies, and issue 2 is going to be great. And it makes Dumbledore's
complete new cast.
There's no punches pulled. It's like when Voldemort killed Dumbledore. I'm just saying, just one and done. It had to happen. He had to go. It was like Herschel in The Walking Dead. He had to go. He had to go. It was a problem, and it was time for him to go.
Yeah, it was really weird when at the very end, when Gina reaches in her pocket and hands the Matrix of Leadership to Sharon, and it's like, one day an Autobot will rise from our ranks. Wait, I think I'm getting my movies mixed up, my franchises mixed up. But anyway, yeah.
No, I'm not going to push too much further into that. I know you got a bunch of stretch goals coming. I mean, you're over 10,000, so there's a bunch of free shit that if you spend $20 or more that you're going to get. So if you're going to spend, money, you might as well spend the 20 to get all the free shit that you can get. And obviously, there's a few more. I think the next one's at what, 12.5? I want to say stretch goal.
Yeah, we actually unlock a new cover. There's my brain just.
I thought it was a T-shirt. I thought it was a T-shirt that was unlocking.
Yes, we did unlock a T-shirt, a very rude T-shirt.
I love it.
I don't know if you have a picture you can show.
I don't have a picture. This is a family-friendly show here.
It is not a family-friendly shirt.
No. I can't wait to see people wearing it in the wild at
But
conventions and
yes,
stuff.
please get the shirt and then wear it to Thanksgiving dinner, please. That would be great. I would pay to see that.
Hmm.
You should
I
wear it to
really,
San Diego Comic-Con Thanksgiving.
oh man.
I
Oh,
I have to ask about that because I haven't asked anybody about this. And I'm not going to tell you my thought, but what are you two thinking about that? Because that's in your neck of the woods, Laurie. Sort of.
What?
San Diego.
Oh,
I'm an East
I
Coast boy.
I have
You're
been
in the West Coast territory.
I have been to San Diego Comic Con. We're kind of avoiding cons right now with all the COVID stuff, but
So what do you think of it being on Thanksgiving weekend?
oh, are they still running it? Are they actually
I
doing
think
that?
so. I think so. I just saw an ad for it, and I'm like, I don't know if they're fully running it. I think it's ludicrous. I
That
don't even
seems
think it's
like a bad
COVID
idea.
ludicrous. I think it's the
yeah.
worst idea ever because it's gonna. Who wants to? The whole thing about Thanksgiving is that everything comes to your house. Then it's Black Friday. Everybody's sort of recovering from Thanksgiving. People see each other in and around Thanksgiving. And I think it's just like I just think it's poor marketing. I think you should do it the week before or the week after. You don't do
Yeah,
it during that weekend. It's like
I Yeah, anytime I see a convention during a holiday, I'm just like, really? I don't know about this, guys. I mean, if it's a holiday, I mean, there are certain holidays that I think it could work out. Like, there's a con in here in Austin called Greater Austin Comic Con that has had their show on Father's Day weekend, which means that it's kind of a fun thing if you're a dad and your kid you town take your kids, or if you're a dad who loves comics and loves nerd stuff, it's a fun day out. But then if it's like a big family holiday, I mean, what's next? We're gonna have cons on Christmas weekend,
so
like.
if you have a con on the 4th of July, it could be a blast. If you have
Sure.
a con on Labor Day, it's fun.
Dragon
I
Con.
mean, I've been to a con on Easter. It was great. It was fun. Those to me though, that doing a holiday a con on Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, like that just is not. New Year's could be fun actually, technically,
It could
but
be if you have a con on a holiday that has specific traditions, that gets tricky, especially family stuff.
right.
so. I mean, I was just curious how you two view it because I just think it's going to be a disaster, and I think it's going to make a dumpster fire look good.
Yeah, I don't think they're not gonna have attendance. I'll be shocked if they have attendance.
I think it even goes further because obviously I've never boothed at a con. I've been a consumer. I've presented at cons, fan panels, and one of the things is that I understand people have to make money. And if people aren't there and you're a commission artist and you're charging $275 for a commission and you're expecting to do X and then, well, you're not making your bank on it, it's not good. And then if you lose money or you barely break even, it doesn't end well. And
Yeah, and San Diego tabling fees are very expensive. They're very high.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I've done San Diego exactly once, and it wasn't even really. I didn't have a table. I was doing a signing uh for a Blu-ray, which is it's again a long story, but and I remember just going that one time and thinking like, man, this is like, and talking to other artists who do it, and they're like, the amount of prep work involved and the amount of work you have to put into it in order just to hope to break even. um I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if this is it, Chief. I don't know if this is it, guys. I really wonder what their marketing data told them,
Right.
because it'll
so
be maybe because of everything being all effed up. Maybe they'll make a shit ton of money. I have no idea, but I mean, conventional wisdom would say maybe not Thanksgiving weekend.
So for me, with cons, and a lot of people know my position, it's I might never ever go to a con again. I had 2 to 3 bad cons. I've had bad experiences dealing with cons. I've done a lot of stuff with that, and it's just I'm at the stage where this is the first time I've ever made money podcasting this year. And it sounds kind of crazy that, in the middle of hell and in the middle of everything being fucked up, that I'm making money and that I'm doing good. I'm not getting rich, but I've never made money at a con. I've been treated like shit at cons. I've known people who I felt didn't deserve to speak were speaking and getting paid, and I wasn't getting a cent. And you're not going to probably see me at a con for a long time, if ever again, because I can actually teach and do what I want on the internet and make more money. And it's kind of just one of those things where, I just don't see the economics. People say, oh, networking. I'm networking beyond where I've ever networked. In the last 22 months, I have 300 more Facebook friends, and all of them are comic, wrestling, cosplay, and voice actors that I didn't have at the start of COVID. So that's how I feel. But enough about that. We've been speaking for a while. I don't know what that private message says. It might be about conventional wisdom. It may or may not be.
It was a pun. It was a terrible pun. I'm sorry.
Well, I said conventional wisdom.
But I do want to give both you an opportunity to promote yourselves, because obviously, Laurie, you had Unlikely Hero Studios, obviously Miss Medusa's, fucked up circus shit.
I'm just going to call it that. It's like Miss Medusa's fucked up circus of stuff. So I'll be, like 30 years, I'm gonna be like, I remember that comic, Miss Medusa's fucked up bullshit.
I'm gonna get the name wrong. And I don't want to piss off Cora. So
when we talk about it privately, we just call it quadruple M, because it's all 4 M's.
M cubed. No, what's the 4 to the 4th power? I don't remember.
M, yeah.
We just call it
M to the 4, whatever. Sure. Promotion. The Miss Medusa's Monstrous Menagerie Kickstarter is live now. Please help us hit stretch goals, because then we can pay Matt to make the next book. The next stretch goal coming up is it's a holofoil, sort of like Tales from the Crypt style cover. With Gina on it. It's really awesome. The stretch goal after that, we're gonna give anyone backing and getting magnets more magnets. We're adding on a red comb Andy and a trash magnet, which I'm really excited about because I love trash.
Yeah, the trash is amazing.
And then you can follow us on UH Studios on Facebook, at UH Studios Official on Instagram, at UH Studios on Twitter, Unlikely Hero Studios on YouTube. It's all pretty easy to find us. And we got all kinds of new shit coming out in the next couple months, so follow us and stay tuned.
And what about you, Matt? Where can people find you? Because you're just not an indie comic guy. You're sort of industry professional.
So I don't have anything to promote. I'm just kidding. I have so much to promote. You can find me over at mattfrankart.net. I have my own personal Patreon, which is patreon.com/mattfrankart. I'm on all the Twitters and the Tumblrs. Well, I used to be on Tumblr, Twitter, and the Facebook and the Instagram. In addition to Miss Medusa, I also am working on another comic called Dinosaur War Eisenborg, which is, again, based on an old 70s Japanese TV series. It's going to be real fun. It's real weird. It's real wacky. That'll hopefully be coming out in English at some point in the near future. It's going to start off in Japan. In addition, I'm working with a print company called Nakatomi Inc., helping curate a series of screen prints based on the Ultraman franchise. We just did a Tom Whalen print and an Attack Peter print. I will be doing a print that'll be coming out in the not too distant future. And what else? Right now I'm doing a Let's Play series on Metroid Dread with Rage Select. So come watch me scream about how I want to marry Samus, because she is all of the shooty kicky. And but no, we're having a lot of fun there. So yeah, that's all the things I can think of off the top of my head. There's always like 500 other things that I'm doing that I don't even remember. So yeah.
There's a lot of stuff going on. So obviously, I've been saying this, I'm going to keep saying it, you have to support indie. And what that means, first and foremost, is that you have to back indie projects on Kickstarter or Indiegogo. I don't know the other one. I think it's Zoop. I think is it Zoop or Zoo or something.
I've never heard of that.
I don't even know what it is. There's like a new one popping up every 5 minutes.
Patreon too. Patreon's a good place for indie projects.
Well, I'm sorry. What'd you say?
Patreon also is good for some indie projects.
That is true. That is true. Patreon. That's the one that I forget. That is always the one I forget. It's ironic because I do support projects on Patreon, and I've never even opened it up because they send it to my email. You know, all these people. It's the weirdest thing. Having said that, though, and one of the things that I'm gonna keep saying is that first and foremost, as I was saying, money dictates everything, and so backing and actually throwing your money at projects, because I'm not, and you're not, and Matt sort of is, DC, Marvel, IDW, but even still with this book, it's not having the bankroll that those big companies have, and you, the backers, are really making it happen, and making this book happen, and making the second issue happen, and the third issue happen, and so that goes a long way. Even going beyond that, though, once you back it, or if you're in a position where you can't, sharing also goes a tremendous way. Tweeting something out, retweeting something, sharing it onto your wall on Facebook, your friend page, sharing it into groups, actually joining groups and sharing things out in groups, or even just liking it on Facebook, or even just telling somebody about it goes a long way too. There are plenty of projects, and I'm sure you know, and we're going to embarrass my friend Corey. I don't know if you know this story, Laurie, but when we did the first interview, either you shared it or I shared it mid-interview, and Corey was like, "Oh, I didn't even see this. I'm going to go back," and he actually backed it live, your last project. And so it's kind of a crazy thing. I tell the story all the time, where it does actually change because just people did not see that project before. And then somebody saw the interview, they're like, "Oh, this is a project that's actually going on right now. Oh, I got to actually pay attention and look at it." So it does go a long way. Also, telling people that you back the project is important as well. And let's say that you don't like this project, but you like something that Matt does, or you like something that Laurie has done. Picking up those books too is very helpful, because while that might not directly benefit this project per se, what it will do is that it does help to feed artists, writers, studios, and that money goes around, because we all have bills, and you never know what's going to be the impetus that's going to help somebody get to the next stage. And that's super important as well. And if you like this book, you should go buy the rest of the books, because it's super important. Also, I am an independent content creator. I do have ads, I have live reads, and all that stuff, but running this project is expensive, and it is not easy. A lot of effort goes into this, so I appreciate when people either buy me a coffee. I have a Kickstarter, and my rates on Kickstarter are going to be cheaper. There is about 50 spots on the first 2 days of launch that are significantly cheaper. So if you want live reads, or you want a guaranteed spot, I am being a lot more selective going into 2022. That is one of the only ways to get on. Otherwise, I will choose you. You can ask, but I might say yes or no moving forward. Definitely, and also when you buy a live read or a guaranteed ad spot on my Kickstarter, you're really supporting this thing going forward. And you're supporting everything that's come up to this point, which is 180 interviews this year, 90 last year, and probably 150 next year. So please go support me there. But more importantly than that, share, actually like my Facebook page, and join my comic group, because I appreciate that. So yeah, and also go buy their book. Go buy their book. Stop being cheap and buy their book. It will help you tremendously. It will change your life. It might make you feel a little weird, and then you might discover something about yourself as an individual. I know that we're running out of time, so I'm going to give both of you the final word. If you would like to fight over it, or you'd both like to do half of it, or somebody has a better final word than the other, be my guest. So there you go.
Thank you very much, everybody. And I guess definitely I hope everybody enjoys the book. And I think it's relatable to say this in both relation to the book and to Kickstarter and to the industry. The one monster you can't kill is capitalism.
We now know your political views.
I like money. I can buy more Godzilla toys.
I feel like that was a good closer.
We could end right there. We could end right there. You know, capitalism for the win, and that's a wrap right there.
Thank you, guys.